things. I can see if the door. So there is actually a back door of the canal cruise here, and if you go outside, we have a toilet there. Don't worry, it's inside again. But there's really a door there that you can use as a toilet. And if you go outside, please do not stand on the benches. And that's a serious comment because the bridges are very low in Amsterdam. And if you stick your head above this roof, you will have a chance that you get that nasty haircut. It's not a nice one. Suddenly you dye your hair red or something. So that is it. So welcome in Amsterdam. And our canals are very beautiful. We invest loads of money in it to maintain them, because most of them are from like 14th to 17th century, the ones that we're going to seal. And this lake where your ship is docked is very important for Amsterdam. It was always our old harbor. You sailed through the harbor, right? Isn't it? Yeah. So you saw all the cranes and all the storage places for gasoline and cacao and all this kind of stuff. But this right here used to be our main part of the harbor. And nowadays, of course, this is still quite deep because your cruise ship went through it. So you understand that, isn't it? So it's kind of a deep one, and that is why this is actually about 40 feet deep where we are now. And the water is, it's more fresh than salt, but there's quite some salt in this water because as soon as your ship comes through, it takes salt water with it through the locks. That's why we are also struggling by opening the locks very often, because then more salt water comes in, especially in the times that we had these droughts. We had a drought earlier this year, so that's already a while back, but then still it's dangerous to allow too much salt water. So this is brackish water that we're sailing right now. And to the left, can you see there's a church there? Can you see that building? There's a church with a Holy Cross on it. Can you see it? And as soon as we get a bit further, the ones in the back, we'll also see there's another church behind there. You see that? There's two church towers. The one behind there, that's what we call the old church. Do you know why? Yeah, that's it, because it's old. We are very simple people. We don't like complications. But that is it's really the oldest one. It was already in the 14th century. We started building it, and it was dedicated to Saint Nicholas. And he was the patron saint. You cannot hear me at the back? Okay, then we're gonna have a look. So I'm so sorry, thank you for mentioning it, because usually, can you hear me now? Is it getting better? Yes, okay, now you can hear me. Very good. Very good. So that is that church that was that you can see there was actually behind there was the oldest church. And it was dedicated to Saint Nicholas. Then the Reformation took place, and in the Dutch Reformed Church, saints are not being worshipped. That is why they started to call it the Old Church. And the ones here in front right now, was built only in the 19th century, the church to the left. And that's a Catholic church dedicated to Saint Nicholas now. So that is why. But the church was built a few years before the railway station was built, because that's what we see to the left as well. Can you see that? The railway station? The church was originally built opposite of the harbor of Amsterdam, because this is where all the tall ships used to dock. And then suddenly they built a station and 3 artificial islands there. And everybody criticized it, because a station right in the center of the city was not such a big problem, but right in the center of the harbor, it closed off Amsterdam from its rich maritime history. Many of you know that New York used to be called New Amsterdam. Australia was discovered by the Dutch. New Zealand as well, from European perspective. Of course, there were people living there, so you understand, it's a rich maritime history. So you see the ferries going up and down, free of charge. Isn't that fun? Everything that is free is fun, isn't it? Yeah, we pay taxes, that's true. That's an intelligent remark. And we see the big tower, can you see it? On top of the tower, can you see people sitting on the swing there? Yes! The swing is called over the edge, because they actually swing over the edge. Isn't that nice? So, yes! But before you do that, before you are allowed to go on the swing, you first have to visit one of our coffee shops. I think some of you are saying, you know what they're doing in coffee shops here? You take some free time this afternoon, they're smoking marijuana in these coffee shops. And be careful in the coffee shops. But that's what you can see. This is really a swing that swings over the edge. It's a public lookout tower. Of course, you pay an entrance ticket. You go into the fastest elevator in Europe. In 20 seconds, it crosses 20 floors. And then you're upstairs there, and you can enjoy the beautiful view. And the building next to it, that whitish building that's built in the shape of a frog. Can you see that? Because where the window is, that's where the eye of a frog is. And it's a film museum, so we have historical films, but also contemporary films playing there. And then, well, the harbor of Amsterdam, you have seen already to the right, it's famous for cacao, to make chocolate. So yes, all the Belgium and Swiss chocolate first comes to Amsterdam. We take our share, and then we allow these guys to do their famous stuff, and we re-import it. And then gasoline, coals, this kind of things. It's the fourth largest harbor of Europe. Rotterdam is much larger harbor. It's the largest harbor of Europe, and that is in a town just an hour drive from here. Eh? You've come to a very small country. The Netherlands is a small country. So which countries are you from? US. Most of it's only 1/10 of the surface of California, the Netherlands. 1/10 of the it's just very tiny, but very cozy, very beautiful, rich history. So, and Amsterdam is the largest city. It has about 820,000 inhabitants. That's all. Of course, all the other cities are nearby because it's such a small country, so the urban center is much larger. But officially the municipality only has that many. Then here to the right, can you see there's a construction built around these buildings in the water that was already placed there because we reclaimed this from the lake and we built these beautiful buildings here. And that's what we have been doing over the centuries. So everything that we see now here to the right, to the left, these were just islands. Islands, reclaimed islands, and that's how we have been expanding in this lake already since the 15th century. In a sense, Amsterdam consists out of 90 islands because it was part of land reclamation in a swamp. So it was not that this all was lake or something, it was also a swamp. And that's also why we started to dig canals. Because if you dig a canal, you drain out the water and your soil becomes dry and you can live on it. Or keep some cattle, do something else fun. So that is why we started to dig the canals in the first place. Later on, water transportation became very important, cargo ships and ships. But nowadays we just use them for recreation. Because there's a speed limit on the canals. 6 kilometers per hour, 4 miles per hour. So you don't go quick on the canals. And this is an old railway bridge. Can you see that to the right hand side? So this is an old railway bridge that they wanted to demolish, but the municipality sold it off for €1. They sold it off with the promise to that restaurant that they would pay for the upkeep of it. Eventually the previous restaurant went bankrupt, so it was kind of expensive, but now the second one is there, they're giving it a go. And then very soon we are going to see our houseboats already.
Yeah.
Have you heard about the houseboats in Amsterdam? Yes, 2,500 beautiful floating houses we have. They are not all beautiful. Some are very beautiful, some are very ugly. But they are very, very nice to see. People live there the whole year round. They have all the facilities that they need. You can see here to the right hand side. Can you see it? So we are prepared for climate change. Let the flood come. We float anyway. But people started to live on boats when we had major housing shortages, like after the war. And then it was a cheap solution to still live downtown, but then you moved on a boat, why not? But then suddenly the municipality, they gave out all these docking permits. And these were traded on the free market. So nowadays still, if you buy a boat that you want to use as a houseboat, you need a docking permit to dock it. And these docking permits are traded on the free market, and we still have housing shortages downtown in Amsterdam. That is why for a houseboat you easily pay like 400,000 euros, even more, 600, depending on where and what type of boat and what they ask for it. But a large part of that money is just a permit to dock it somewhere. And then you can connect to the grid, you connect to the city sewage system, you connect to the natural gas supply, so you have a complete house that you can enjoy afterwards. But most of the houseboats, they don't have an engine from themselves, so when they go out for maintenance, they are talked through the canals. That's what you see a lot. And we are now entering the Prinsengracht or Prinsen Canal. And we can see right over here, immediately to the left, you can see all the different types of facades. Can you see the top of the houses? The first one is a stepped gable, the second one is a clock gable, and the third one is a neck gable. So you see that all these houses in Amsterdam, they have their unique frontal walls, their unique gables, very unique. In that sense, this whole city center is an open-air museum because most of these houses are between the 300 and 400 years old, some even older. And they still are here because Amsterdam was not bombed during the war. Rotterdam was entirely devastated, and that's why we were forced to surrender, because the Nazis, they threatened to do that with every city in this country. But because of that, Amsterdam was spared. So Amsterdam, we still have our historical houses, and that's what we will also see on the canals. In that sense, it is lots of fun to cruise through the canals and enjoy your time here. Look at this, she's feeding the swans, can you see it? The lady here, she's feeding the swans, can you see it?
Oh, that's so cute.
I'm flying.
Oh, there.
Wow, kind of courageous. These swans can be kind of long. So this is the Prinsengracht or Prinsen Canal, and we are going to take a turn here to the left, and then we are going to sail on the Brewery Canal. Breweries. Are you all happy now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are we gonna pass by Anne Frank's house?
No, Anne Frank's house we cannot get there, fortunately. We don't have that in our control, but some of the canals sometimes are closed. So. Because Anne Frank, she lived, well, she was hiding. It was not the place where she voluntarily lived. They lived in the south of the city, and then because they were, the Nazis started to take Jewish people away, they started hiding near a canal, behind the canal house, we could say. And that is nowadays many people visit it, but you have to book far in advance because it is fully booked.
Yeah, I've been there. I thought we were gonna pass by.
Are these one way?
Yeah, most of the canals are one way nowadays.
So we're not passing by.
Because it is a bit of a tricky if they all the time have to wait for each other and this kind of things. But they're one way for larger boats. We will see it right over here. So the Brewery Canal, this was actually elected as the most beautiful canal of Amsterdam several times. It's just so charming in around. You can also see that all these houses, they have their hoisting beams. Have you seen that on top of the houses? There's a beam sticking out. Almost all of them have it with a hook on it. You see that? That is still being used for furniture and refrigerators or pianos, because the steps are very steep and narrow in these houses. So if you want to move large items, it is kind of nice to do that, to really use the hoisting beams. And in the old days we used it for merchandise goods, to hoist them up, because many of these houses were also warehouses, especially the ones with the large shutters that you can see on some of the houses. So that is why we use the hoisting beams as well. And you can see more. You can see the very large doors here on the ground floor. Can you see that with this house to the right, the black house? That was actually a house to park coaches from the horses. Horses with carriages were parked right. That's why these doors are so large there. So every house had a different purpose, but many rich people also lived on the canals. That's why they were originally designed as contemporary suburbs. And if you look at the map, you can see all these different things. I can even walk by and point out where we're going. But you can see all these different canals, and 3 of them were dug simultaneously in one go, in one city expansion. So that was very unique in these days. This was just after the medieval times in Europe, when they were just building house for house, basically. But we had a big city expansion already happening.
Oh, dat is ongelooflijk. Nou, nog een keer was.
So I walk by and I point you out where we are.
Ja, we gaan naar de heren.
I can point out where we are. We're now going to be,
Yeah.
we are right here, and then we're going to take this turn soon. We are right here. We're going to sail up this canal.
Oh, that's
You're now right here.
Wow.
This is your GPS. Every table needs a GPS.
这要行到呢度来嘛？
唔係咁轉過嚟都行過嚟，
呢個行過嚟，行到邊度終點？
終點翻返之後上船嗰度啦。
Wordt daar Jan Bloos. Wordt de flying zo van de koude heer. Zit er wat achter jou?
Still German.
Oh, die mag op blijven.
Hallo. Hallo, daar.
Ja, en als Jan steeds door is, dan komt de flying. Mevrouw de heer. Ik wacht jou even af.
Depends if it's weather. Yeah, Mother Nature has been So then welcome on what we call the Herengracht, Gentleman's Canal, right over here. And we're going to sail in this canal for quite a bit. You see a lot of construction going on the canals. We have to invest for the next few years 2 billion euros in repairing the shores. So we have raised the tourist taxes a little bit, if you don't mind. 2 billion euros for a municipality of just 820,000. That's it. So it's a lot of money. It's very expensive to do all that repair work on the shores. But it's important that it's happening. They neglected it because it's not a hot political item for the citizens here. Because the canals are so old already that everybody takes them for granted. But that's of course not the case. And then a few years back we had a canal, the shores collapsing. And then of course everything needed to be researched, and they researched 200 kilometers, that's about 130 miles or something, of space that needed to be renovated. So that's what you can see here to the left as well. A lot of effort has been put in there. And then we can see the very nice houses. You can see with the large windows, that are the old warehouses here. And this one with the step gable to the left, can you see that one? Can you see that it's leaning to the front a bit? Can you see that? It's like it's falling over a bit. Can you see that? That is because this one is beautiful. Eh? This old warehouse, 1590. This is among the oldest warehouses that we have here in Amsterdam, with the large green shutters. But the houses, they all have been renovated several times since they've been built. But the ones leading to the front are leaning to the front because we used to build them with timber. Every floor was built a little bit more to the front so that the rain only dripped on the top floor and then on the ground. And after a few devastating fires, the municipality forced everybody to build bricks in front of their wooden skeletons. But the wooden skeleton was leaning to the front of the structure. So the bricks also started to lean to the front. That is why we have many houses leaning to the front in Amsterdam. But you also, this gentleman is pointing out another house, you will see it more often, that houses are leaning to the side in Amsterdam. And that is a problem, and that has to do with the fact that this was originally just a swamp. So basically in a swamp, if you want to build something, you need a very good foundation. And we use very tall trees for these foundations, and these trees are still underneath. So different woods on top of each other, 40 feet deep into the ground, that's where we have the foundations of these houses. And that wood is still okay as long as it stays moist. But if the water level drops too low, the oxygen collides with the wood and it starts to rot. And then houses start to lean to the side. We will show you a few examples of that. So that you will see alongside as well. And in that sense, we have unique architecture here, and we also call them the dancing houses because they look like they're all dancing or something. But you can see that here to the left, you can see another house leaning to the front. Can you see this one here?
Yeah.
The one with the Ukrainian flag, can you see it? You can really see what I meant, what I just mentioned. So you can see the hook on top where we used to hoist all the furniture up and everything. Then we also have beautiful street lights. Have you seen the street lights on the sides?
Yes.
Beautiful, no? They're very elegant. These still date back from the 19th century when we used to light all these lamps with gas. So there was one man with a ladder, and he used to literally put his ladder on these two things on the pole, and he used to light every lamp here in the city. And now, of course, we have electricity, but still, it is in that sense an interesting thing that we still have them. And then you can see the beautiful trees alongside the canals as well. Have you seen the trees? And here you can see a rope coming down. Can you see that to the left? Rope coming down from the hoisting beam. But the trees are beautiful Dutch elm trees. And I see many of you thinking, oh, that Dutch elm disease. It wasn't our fault. It was just the Dutch scientists who identified the disease. Don't blame us for us, we just tried to save them. But these elm trees can cope very well with the high water levels in the city. Now we have nice views here to the right with a narrow canal, can you see it? And because other trees, they would have problems with the water level, and they would have their roots going to the surface and cracking everything open. And because of this, we have 75,000 elm trees in Amsterdam. Isn't that nice? 75,000 elm trees. And then the canals have been built in a bend. Have you noticed that? On the map you can see it. It's in a crescent moon shape. And here we have one beautiful house built in that bend as well. That is here on the corner. It's called the Bartolotti house. And Bartolotti, it sounds rather Italian, isn't it, the name? It was also Italian, but there was a Dutch merchant living here, and he didn't have any offspring to inherit his name, so he gave it to a merchant, and he was called Bartolotti. And that's what we can see here. We can see a few Latin phrases on it, religione prohibate, and I don't speak really Latin, but the other one means through hard labor and good virtue we became rich. That's basically what is written. A question? Well, the father. So before the war broke out, the father of Anne Frank, Otto, he owned a shop. And of course they put it on somebody else's name, because otherwise the Nazis would have confiscated it. And then they started hiding behind him, behind the shop. We have people dump it in there, it just disappears in there, it falls, whatever happens. Maybe at midnight after a good drink, or I don't know what. It is really filled with other stuff. And do you think that this is kind of clean water, if you look at it? No? But you don't smell it at all. So it is only because of this swampy peat soil that it looks so dirty, this water. It is not dirty at all. If you take a glass out, you can look right through it.
So you don't have a problem with algae?
No, algae we don't have troubles with. We flush them also very properly. Twice a week we create a strong current at night time because it's very difficult to sail against that current. And then we flush out all the dirty water to the lake where your ship is docked now. And then when there's low tide, we can discharge to the North Sea. That's what we do with the dirty water, and then it flows to our neighboring countries, and we're done with it.
Oh my gosh.
But only when it is low tide we can discharge the water, because when it is high tide, the canals of Amsterdam are below sea level. So that's why these locks are there. You have to go through the locks. That's why we have these locks. Otherwise we wouldn't need locks. But that is very important in that sense. So, and then we can see also here to the left, you can see this typical Amsterdam flag. Can you see the 3 X's here? So the 3 X's, the 3 crosses, that's the coat of arms of the city. So you see it all over Amsterdam, and that represents originally the St. Andrew crosses. St. Andrew was the patron saint of the fishermen, and the first people moving into this area were fishermen. In a small swamp about 1,000 years ago they moved in here. And then in the 14th century Amsterdam became a place of pilgrimage because it was said that miracles happened here. And then in the 16th century the Reformation took place, and in the 17th century the world was basically ruled by Amsterdam. just for 1 century, and we still talk about it. It says quite a bit. But really for 1 century. Have you seen the narrow house with the Ukrainian flag? You have to look back a little bit. Can you see how narrow that house is? It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, we have many of these narrow houses in Amsterdam because we used to pay the property taxes for the width of the frontal wall. The wider the frontal wall, the more tax you had to pay. Some people didn't want that, and if they were early in buying the plot of land, they could build a narrow frontal wall and a wide house at the back. Smart. So in some of these houses, there's really no space for a proper bed inside. These people are sleeping standing up. No way! No, it's just a joke, just a joke. But anyway, we have many of these narrow houses in Amsterdam. You can see more of them if you really walk around for a while. And then, have you seen the railing also, protecting the cars from falling into the water? To the right hand side you can see it. Can you see it?
Yeah.
It is very important. In the 1980s it wasn't there. And we had about 20 cars a year dropping in the canals. It was a problem, and the municipality didn't want to pay for it because they were not so, they didn't have so much money. What do you think they paid for this railing? Not much. But it was the insurance company that came up with it. They said, we paid for it, otherwise we have to pay for all these old risk claims. And the canals have been put on the UNESCO heritage list because they're very original. It was a very unique accomplishment to dig these canals and everything. But then UNESCO didn't like that railing at all because it was not original to 17th century. But we didn't want to remove it either. We had earlier this year actually a small minivan filled with tourists dropping in the canals. Can you imagine? You order a driver and he turned. Fortunately, there was the local guy. He was just sitting there and having a coffee. And he was a scuba diver, so even though he didn't have his equipment with him, he knew what to do. Get there, get these doors open and grab these people out, you know, no second to lose, or he got them all out. But they must have had their, well, the refreshing swim. Beautiful sandstone houses here to the right, can you see that? Most of the houses in Amsterdam are built from bricks. Clay from the rivers. We have major rivers flowing, the Rhine and everything flow out. But some of them are sandstone, and that was even more important. Have a look to the right. Can you see this house with all the small decorations? Isn't it beautiful? All the small carvings. This is actually a 19th century house. Before that there was another house there, it burned down, and then a tobacco trader, he had it decorated like this. And then after the war, we brought in this house all the Nazis to justice, so also the Dutch that had collaborated with them. So that's an important spot. It's still being used as a war criminal research institute. Then we have actually a few nice sites over here. There's a nice canal to see to the right hand side, some paparazzi's, they like that. And we have the twin brother houses here, the ones leaning to the front, can you see them? The black houses, you see them? We call them the twin brothers, and then we have other twin houses here in the corner. Here are the twin sisters, can you see them? So sometimes they bought these twin houses because they could rent out one house and live in the other one. And if you want to see a house leaning to the side because of the foundation that starts to get damaged, can you see that to the left? It is completely leaning to the side. It is really And then we have a bit further, if you look to the left, you can see suddenly an opening between the two houses, and we can see a large tree. Can you see that? Yeah. And this is actually behind there. You see the windows of a church. Can you see that? Yes. This was a hidden church. So we are well known for our tolerance, but like other countries in the olden days, there was often one dominant religion, the other ones were suppressed. But here in Amsterdam, we just turned a blind eye, and we had people building hidden churches inside normal houses. So the official entrance of this church was at the other side where it looks like a normal house. And then this was a baptized church for the time that the baptized were not, but we had many Catholic hidden churches also. Everybody knew what was happening there because on Sunday, like 100 people go inside one house, and it was obvious. And then here to the right, can you see it? Behind the tree, you can see a beautiful eagle on top of the house. Can you see it? Nice, isn't it? We have beautiful decorations, sandstone decorations done on the top of these houses. Especially here you can see that the houses become huge, large white houses. Can you see that? Can you see the size? So this size is even far more if you realize that it is about 300 feet to the next canal, where you find another house. And in between there you have beautiful gardens as well. So there's a lot of space there in between as well. And many of these houses have like 20 spacious rooms. Who needs that? Come on. But in the old days, many of the people settling down here, these were really the elite of Amsterdam. We call this the Golden Band. They were like bankers as well, and they didn't have offices in these times. So they were also having all their guests coming in. Of course, they needed to show off a little bit how well off they were. And that is why they built these large houses here. Look to the right, you can see all the exotic fruits in the decorations. See that? Can you see the nice staircases of these houses? There's always a door going into these staircases, and that is going straight to the kitchen. So that was for the servants to get. And they're very expensive, these houses. Even this small house here on the corner was already 10 years ago or something. It went for 3.5 million euros, this kind of thing. So that's the best answer I heard in ages. 8 bridges? You had one drink too many. Because there are actually 7 bridges on the rail here. 7 bridges. Would you like to write down the name of the canal underneath your picture? Reguliersgracht.
Oh my gosh.
So then we